transport ship landed on Luna Colony with a soft hiss. 3 different types of alien beings stepped out onto the metal platform, their movements careful and deliberate. They had traveled across the galaxy for this moment, the first ever student exchange program between Earth and the Galactic Federation. Crystal Song of Morning moved like living glass, her crystalline body catching the artificial lights of the space station. Each step created tiny musical notes that echoed through the corridor. She had studied human languages for months, but being here felt completely different from reading about it. Whisper Through Storms floated beside her, a collection of glowing gases held together by an energy field. The Vorthan's thoughts rippled through the air as colored patterns of light. Communication came naturally to their species, but speaking with solid beings still felt strange. Iron Core 17 clanked along behind them, its metal body making precise mechanical sounds with each movement. The Ferox had built themselves from the finest alloys in their home system. To them, biological life seemed impossibly fragile and chaotic. Dr. Amanda Clark waited for them at the entrance to Luna Colony University. She smiled warmly and extended her hand toward each visitor. The gesture confused them at first, but they had learned this was called a handshake, a human greeting custom. "Welcome to our university," Dr. Clark said. "I'm excited to have you in my biology class. You'll be learning alongside our human students about life processes and cellular structures." The aliens exchanged glances. They had expected to study human science in a safe, controlled environment. Learning about theoretical concepts seemed harmless enough. Dr. Clark led them through the corridors of the university. Human students walked past them, chatting and laughing. Jake Morrison waved at the professor while balancing a stack of books. Lisa Parker smiled at the alien visitors and said hello. Kevin Torres nodded politely as he hurried to his next class. The classroom looked normal enough. Desks arranged in rows, a large screen at the front, and various scientific equipment along the walls. The human students took their seats and pulled out notebooks and electronic tablets. "Today we begin with basic human biology," Dr. Clark announced. "Let's start with something simple. The human body is approximately 60% water." She walked to her desk and picked up a small, sharp needle. Without any warning or preparation, she pressed the point against her fingertip. A tiny drop of red liquid formed on her skin. Crystal Song of Morning's entire body began vibrating with shock. The musical tones coming from her crystalline form shifted to high, distressed frequencies. Among her people, deliberately damaging one's physical form was unthinkable. "This is human blood," Dr. Clark said casually, placing the drop on a glass slide. "It's mostly water, but it carries oxygen, nutrients, and waste products throughout our bodies." She slipped the slide under a microscope and adjusted the settings. On the large screen, magnified blood cells appeared, round red objects floating in liquid. "Blood flows through vessels called arteries and veins," she continued. "The heart pumps it continuously, about 70 times per minute for an average adult." Whisper Through Storms pulsed with alarm colors. The concept of liquid flowing through tubes inside a living being seemed horrific. How could any creature survive with flowing liquids inside them? Danny Roberts, one of the human students, raised his hand. "Professor, should we show them white blood cells too?" "Good idea, Danny," Dr. Clark replied. She prepared another slide, this time with a sample that showed different types of cells. "These are white blood cells," she explained, pointing to larger, irregularly shaped objects on the screen. "They hunt down and destroy harmful bacteria and viruses that enter our bodies." Iron Core 17's optical sensors focused intently on the display. The idea that humans had tiny warriors inside their bodies constantly fighting invaders seemed like something from a horror story. "Now, let's talk about how humans obtain energy," Dr. Clark said. She moved to a chart showing the human digestive system. "Humans must consume other living organisms to survive. We break them down using powerful acids in our stomachs." Amy Carter, another student, opened her lunch bag. "Like this sandwich," she said cheerfully. "It has lettuce, tomato, and turkey. All of it used to be alive." She took a bite and began chewing. The alien students watched in fascination and growing horror as she mechanically ground up the organic matter with her teeth. Our stomach acid has a pH of about 1.5 to 2, Dr. Clark explained. That's strong enough to dissolve many metals. It breaks down the food so our bodies can absorb the nutrients. Crystal Song of Morning's vibrations became more rapid. Her people absorbed energy directly from their sun through their crystalline structure. The idea of consuming other living things and dissolving them with acid seemed monstrous. What happens to the parts you cannot use? Whisper Through Storms asked, his gaseous form flickering with nervous energy. We eliminate waste products, Dr. Clark answered matter-of-factly. Some through our lungs as carbon dioxide, some through our skin as sweat, and some through our kidneys as urine. She gestured to Tony Adams, who had just finished running laps around the campus. His skin glistened with moisture and he breathed heavily. Tony here is demonstrating several biological processes, she said. He's breathing faster to take in more oxygen, his heart is pumping blood more rapidly, and he's cooling his body through evaporation of sweat. Tony grinned and wiped his forehead with a towel. Yeah, good workout, he said. Really gets the blood flowing. Iron Core 17 processed this information with growing alarm. Humans were essentially biological machines that consumed other life forms, dissolved them with industrial-strength acid, pumped corrosive liquids throughout their bodies, and expelled waste products continuously. For our next class, Dr. Clark announced, we'll examine human cells more closely. Please bring cotton swabs so we can collect samples from inside your mouths. The human students packed up their belongings and left the classroom, chatting casually about their plans for the evening. They seemed completely unbothered by everything they had just learned. The three alien students remained in their seats, struggling to process what they had witnessed. In one simple biology lesson, they had learned that humans were walking chemical factories powered by the consumption and destruction of other living beings. Crystal Song of Morning finally managed to speak. They seem so normal, she said, her tones reflecting confusion and fear. How do they function with all that liquid inside them? Whisper Through Storms wondered aloud. Iron Core 17's processors were working overtime. We may need to reconsider our understanding of biological life forms, he stated. As they left the classroom, none of them noticed Dr. Clark's small smile. She had taught this introductory class hundreds of times, but she had never seen students quite so attentive to every detail. Tomorrow's lesson on cellular structure would be even more interesting. The next day, the three alien students returned to Dr. Clark's classroom with heavy hearts. They had spent the entire night discussing what they had learned about human biology. None of them had slept well, though sleep meant different things to each of their species. Crystal Song of Morning had dimmed her internal light to almost nothing, trying to process the horror of humans consuming other living beings. Whisper Through Storms had compressed his gaseous form into the smallest possible space, overwhelmed by the thought of liquid flowing through biological tubes. Iron Core 17 had run diagnostic checks on his system 17 times, unable to comprehend how such chaotic biological processes could function. Dr. Clark entered the classroom carrying a box of cotton swabs and small glass slides. The human students filed in behind her, chatting about a movie they had watched the night before. Danny Roberts was telling Rachel Green about the special effects, while Billy Chen and Maria Santos discussed their weekend plans. Good morning, everyone, Dr. Clark said cheerfully. Today we're going to look at human cells up close. Please take a cotton swab and gently scrape the inside of your cheek. She demonstrated by taking a cotton swab and rubbing it against the inside of her mouth. The motion seemed casual and harmless to the human students, who immediately began following her example. Crystal Song of Morning watched in fascination and terror as Danny Roberts scraped living tissue from inside his own body. Among her people, the crystalline structure was permanent and unchanging. The idea of removing parts of oneself seemed like self-destruction. Now place the sample on a slide, and we'll look at it under the microscope, Dr. Clark instructed. Danny put his sample under the microscope and adjusted the focus. On the large screen, individual cells appeared, irregularly shaped blobs with dark centers. These are human cheek cells, Dr. Clark explained. Each one contains all the genetic information needed to build an entire human being. Pete Williams raised his hand. How many cells do we have in total, Professor? Approximately 37 trillion cells, Dr. Clark replied casually. The number hit the alien students like a physical blow. Iron Core 17's processors struggled to comprehend such a massive quantity. 37 trillion separate units all working together inside each human body. But how do you control them all? Crystal Song of Morning asked, her crystalline form resonating with confusion. Dr. Clark smiled. We don't control most of them consciously. They operate automatically based on genetic programming and chemical signals. This revelation sent shockwaves through all three alien visitors. Humans were not single entities at all, but massive colonies of independent microscopic organisms somehow functioning as one being. Each cell has its own job, Dr. Clark continued. Muscle cells contract to create movement. Nerve cells carry electrical signals. Blood cells transport oxygen and nutrients. She pulled up a diagram showing different types of human cells. Each looked completely different from the others, some round, some long and thin, some with many branching extensions. Gary Foster looked at his own cells through another microscope. It's weird to think these little things are what make up my whole body, he said with a laugh. Now let's look at something really interesting, Dr. Clark said. She prepared a new slide with a drop of pond water. These are single-celled organisms, bacteria and other microbes. The screen showed tiny objects moving rapidly through the water. Some were round, others had long tails that propelled them forward. The human immune system fights these when they are harmful, she explained. Let me show you a white blood cell in action. She prepared another slide, this one with a sample of Danny's blood mixed with some bacteria. Under the microscope, they could see larger cells moving toward the smaller bacteria. Watch this, Dr. Clark said, pointing to the screen. A white blood cell approached a bacterium and began to surround it. Slowly, the larger cell engulfed the smaller one completely, trapping it inside. The white blood cell will now digest the bacterium using powerful enzymes, Dr. Clark explained. It literally dissolves the invader from the inside. Whisper Through Storms pulsed with alarm colors. The casual way Dr. Clark described cellular warfare was terrifying. Humans had microscopic soldiers inside their bodies that hunted down and destroyed enemies through chemical dissolution. Amy Carter volunteered for the next demonstration. I have a small cut on my finger from yesterday, she said, showing a tiny wound that was already healing. Can we look at how it's repairing itself? Dr. Clark examined the cut under a magnifying glass. Perfect example of cellular regeneration. Amy's body has already begun producing new cells to replace the damaged tissue. She pointed to the edges of the small wound. Blood cells are forming clots to stop bleeding, while other cells are multiplying to fill in the gap. The entire process happens automatically. Amy shrugged. It'll be completely healed by tomorrow. Humans heal pretty fast from small injuries. Iron Core 17's optical sensors focused intently on the healing wound. The idea that biological organisms could automatically repair themselves seemed impossible. When Ferox machinery was damaged, it required careful analysis and precise reconstruction. Yet humans appeared to fix themselves without conscious effort. What about larger injuries? Crystal Song of Morning asked. Helen Martinez rolled up her sleeve, showing a long scar on her arm. I broke my arm badly 2 years ago, she said. The bone was completely snapped in half, but it grew back together and now it's actually stronger than before. The alien student stared at the scar in disbelief. Helen had survived the complete structural failure of a major support element in her body, and her biological systems had not only repaired the damage but improved upon the original design. Human bones can regenerate completely if properly aligned, Dr. Clark confirmed. The new bone tissue is often denser and stronger than the original. Chris Bailey added, My dad lost the tip of his finger in an accident, but it grew back over several months. Not completely, but most of it. The casual way the humans discussed regenerating body parts sent waves of horror through the alien observers. These biological creatures could literally regrow portions of themselves that had been destroyed. For homework, Dr. Clark announced, I want you to observe your own healing processes. If you have any small cuts or scrapes, watch how they change over the next few days. Take notes on the stages of cellular repair. The human students began packing up their materials, discussing their observations with each other. Lisa Parker showed Tony Adams a small scratch on her hand, explaining how it had looked different that morning. Tomorrow we'll study cellular metabolism, Dr. Clark said. We'll learn how your cells generate energy through controlled combustion processes. The humans filed out of the classroom, completely unaware that they had just described themselves as self-repairing biological machines operated by colonies of trillions of microscopic entities. The three alien students remained seated, struggling to process what they had learned. Humans were not individuals at all, but vast communities of cooperating cells that could automatically heal damage and regenerate lost parts. They speak of it so casually, Whisper Through Storms observed, his gaseous form flickering with distress. 37 trillion cells, Iron Core 17 repeated, his processor still struggling with the concept. Crystal Song of Morning resonated with deep, worried tones. And tomorrow they will tell us about combustion inside their bodies. None of them looked forward to the next lesson. The third day of biology class arrived with an atmosphere of dread among the alien students. Crystal Song of Morning had spent the night researching human cellular structures in the university database, only to become more horrified by what she found. Whisper Through Storms had compressed himself into an even smaller form, trying to hide from the terrible knowledge he was gaining. Iron Core 17 had calculated the energy requirements for maintaining 37 trillion cells, and the numbers seemed impossible. Dr. Clark entered the classroom with her usual bright smile, carrying a heart rate monitor and some exercise equipment. The human students looked relaxed and ready for another lesson. Jake Morrison was finishing his morning coffee, while Lisa Parker stretched her arms above her head. Today we're going to learn about cellular metabolism, Dr. Clark announced. This is how your cells create energy to keep you alive and functioning. She pulled up a diagram showing the inside of a human cell. Various structures were labeled, including something called mitochondria. These are mitochondria, she said, pointing to small oval shapes. They're like tiny power plants inside each of your cells. They burn glucose and oxygen to create energy. Tony Adams raised his hand. So we're literally on fire inside? Dr. Clark laughed. In a way, yes. It's controlled combustion at the cellular level. Each mitochondrion is running millions of tiny chemical fires every second. The alien students exchanged horrified glances. Crystal Song of Morning's musical tones shifted to frequencies of pure terror. The idea that humans were powered by millions of microscopic fires seemed like something from a nightmare. Let me demonstrate how this works, Dr. Clark said. She attached the heart rate monitor to Tony's chest. Tony, can you do some jumping jacks for us? Tony stood up and began jumping, spreading his arms and legs apart and then bringing them back together. The monitor showed his heart rate climbing from 70 beats per minute to over 100. Notice how Tony's breathing is getting faster, Dr. Clark observed. His cells are demanding more oxygen to feed the fires inside them. His heart is pumping blood faster to deliver that oxygen. Tony continued jumping, his face becoming red and moisture appearing on his skin. After 2 minutes, he stopped and sat down, breathing heavily. Now watch what happens to his heart rate over the next few minutes, Dr. Clark said. The monitor showed Tony's heart rate slowly decreasing as his breathing returned to normal. His cellular fires are returning to their normal level, she explained. The mitochondria are reducing their energy production because the demand has decreased. Whisper Through Storms pulsed with alarm colors. You can control the intensity of the fires inside your body? Not consciously, Dr. Clark replied. Our cells automatically adjust their energy production based on our needs. When we exercise, they burn more fuel. When we rest, they burn less. Danny. Roberts wiped sweat from his forehead. I went running this morning and could really feel my muscles burning, he said casually. Excellent observation, Danny, Dr. Clark said. That burning sensation happens when your muscles run out of oxygen. They switch to a different type of combustion called anaerobic metabolism. She drew another diagram on the board showing glucose being broken down without oxygen. When your muscles can't get enough oxygen, they start fermenting glucose instead of burning it cleanly. This produces lactic acid, which creates that burning feeling. Iron Core 17's processors were struggling to comprehend this information. Humans could switch between different types of internal combustion depending on available resources. It was like having backup power systems throughout their entire body. So the burning feeling means we're making acid inside our muscles? Asked Rachel Green. Exactly, Dr. Clark confirmed. Your muscle cells are literally producing acid when they can't get enough oxygen. The acid builds up and creates discomfort, which tells you to slow down or rest. Amy Carter demonstrated by doing push-ups. She started easily, but after 20 repetitions, her movements became slower and her face showed strain. I can feel the burn starting in my arms, she said, continuing to exercise. After 30 push-ups, she stopped and shook her arms. Yeah, definitely feeling the acid buildup now. The alien students watched in horror as Amy described the sensation of acid production in her muscles as if it were perfectly normal. Now let's talk about what fuels these cellular fires, Dr. Clark continued. She opened her lunch bag and pulled out an apple. This apple contains glucose, which is the primary fuel for human cells. She took a bite of the apple and began chewing. My teeth are breaking this down mechanically while enzymes in my saliva begin chemical breakdown. When I swallow, it goes to my stomach. Crystal Song of Morning vibrated with distress as Dr. Clark described the digestive process. In my stomach, hydrochloric acid continues breaking down the apple. The acid has a pH of about 1.5, which is strong enough to dissolve metal. Billy Chen pulled out his own lunch. I love spicy food, he said, biting into a sandwich loaded with hot peppers. The capsaicin in these peppers would be poisonous to most animals, but humans can eat it for fun. Excellent point, Billy, Dr. Clark said. Humans can consume many substances that would be toxic to other species. Alcohol, caffeine, chocolate, all of these are harmful to various animals, but humans process them easily. Maria Santos opened a can of soda. This has caffeine in it, she said, taking a drink. It's a stimulant that increases my heart rate and makes me more alert. Whisper Through Storms flickered with disbelief. Humans were casually consuming what they described as toxins and poisons, somehow processing them safely through their biological systems. What happens to the waste from all this combustion? Iron Core 17 asked. Great question, Dr. Clark replied. Carbon dioxide is expelled through the lungs with each breath. Other waste products are filtered by the kidneys and eliminated as urine. Some toxins are processed by the liver and removed from the blood. Gary Foster raised his hand. Professor, what about when we exercise really hard and our muscles hurt the next day? That's called delayed onset muscle soreness, Dr. Clark explained. Intense exercise actually creates tiny tears in your muscle fibers. Your body repairs these tears, with new tissue making the muscle stronger than before. The casual way she described humans damaging and rebuilding their own muscles sent waves of horror through the alien observers. Pete Williams stretched his arms. I lifted weights yesterday, and I can definitely feel my muscles rebuilding today. It's like a good hurt. Humans actively damage their bodies to make them stronger, Dr. Clark confirmed. This process of controlled destruction and regeneration is how we build muscle mass and bone density. The bell rang, signaling the end of class. The human students packed up their belongings, discussing their exercise plans for the evening. Tomorrow, we'll learn about human adaptation and healing, Dr. Clark announced. Come prepared to discuss how humans survive in extreme environments. As the humans left the classroom, the three alien students remained frozen in their seats. They had learned that humans were powered by millions of cellular fires, could switch between different combustion modes, regularly consumed toxins for pleasure, and deliberately damaged themselves to become stronger. They are walking chemical factories, Iron Core 17 observed quietly. Powered by controlled explosions, Whisper Through Storms added, his form flickering with terror. Crystal Song of Morning resonated with the deepest, most frightened tones her species could produce, and tomorrow we learn how they adapt to survive. None of them wanted to know what horrors awaited in the next lesson. The fourth day of class brought a sense of impending doom to the alien students. Crystal Song of Morning had dimmed her light to barely visible levels, while Whisper Through Storms had reduced himself to a thin wisp of gas. Iron Core 17 moved with mechanical precision, his systems running constant calculations to try to understand how human biology could possibly function. Dr. Clark arrived carrying several photographs and medical scans. The human students seemed particularly excited today. Danny Roberts was showing off a bandage on his arm where he had gotten a vaccination, while Lisa Parker flexed her muscles, talking about her new workout routine. Today we're studying human healing and adaptation, Dr. Clark announced. Let's start with something remarkable about human recovery. She projected an image of an X-ray showing a broken bone. The fracture was clearly visible, with the bone separated into two pieces. This is Billy's arm from last year, she said. Billy Chen held up his arm and smiled. He broke both bones in his forearm during a skateboarding accident. The alien student stared at the image in shock. The structural damage looked catastrophic, like a building collapse. Here's the same arm 6 months later, Dr. Clark said, showing another X-ray. The second image showed the bones completely healed, with thick white lines where the breaks had been. The new bone is actually stronger than the original, Billy explained cheerfully. My doctor said the calcium deposits made it like having built-in reinforcement. Crystal Song of Morning's musical tones became high and panicked. Complete structural. Failure followed by stronger reconstruction seemed impossible. Humans can survive losing significant portions of their bodies. Dr. Clark continued. She showed a photograph of a man with a prosthetic leg. This person lost his leg in an accident, but continued living normally. Tony Adams raised his hand. My uncle lost 3 fingers in an industrial accident. He learned to use his remaining fingers and now he types faster than I do. Remarkable adaptation. Dr. Clark agreed. The human brain rewires itself to compensate for lost body parts. New neural pathways form automatically. She pulled up a brain scan showing bright areas of activity. This scan shows a person who lost their sight. Notice how the visual cortex has been repurposed for processing sound and touch. Amy Carter spoke up. My grandmother had a stroke that damaged part of her brain. She had to relearn how to walk and talk, but other parts of her brain took over those functions. Whisper Through Storms pulsed with disbelief. Humans could lose entire organs and body parts, then restructure their remaining systems to maintain function. Now let's discuss environmental adaptation, Dr. Clark said. Humans live in more diverse environments than almost any other species in the galaxy. She showed pictures of humans in various extreme locations: ice-covered mountains, scorching deserts, deep underwater, and even floating in the vacuum of space. This person is living at an altitude where oxygen levels are 50% lower than normal, she said, pointing to a photograph of people in the mountains. Their bodies adapted by producing more red blood cells to carry oxygen more efficiently. Rachel Green mentioned, my family went to Colorado last summer. It took a few days to get used to the thin air, but then we felt fine. Temporary adaptation, Dr. Clark explained. Your body sensed the low oxygen and began producing more blood cells within hours. Iron Core 17 processed this information with growing alarm. Humans could automatically modify their internal systems based on environmental conditions. Here are humans living in temperatures that would freeze most biological material, Dr. Clark continued, showing images of people in Arctic conditions. Gary Foster laughed. Last winter it got down to -20 degrees. I just put on extra clothes and went to work anyway. Human skin can survive brief exposure to temperatures from -40 to over 100 degrees Celsius, Dr. Clark stated. Internal temperature regulation keeps vital organs functioning. The alien students were horrified. Such temperature ranges would instantly destroy their physical forms. What about reproduction? Crystal Song of Morning asked, though she dreaded the answer. Dr. Clark smiled. Human reproduction is quite fascinating. 2 individuals combine genetic material to create a completely new organism. She showed a diagram of human reproductive cells. These cells contain half the genetic information from each parent. When they combine, they form a unique individual with traits from both. Maria Santos added, my baby brother looks like both my parents, but also completely different from either of them. The developing human grows inside one parent's body for 9 months, Dr. Clark continued. During this time, the parent's body adapts to support two life forms simultaneously. Pete Williams mentioned, "My sister just had a baby. She said her heart had to pump 40% more blood during pregnancy to support both her and the baby." Whisper Through Storms flickered with terror. The idea of one organism growing inside another, sharing resources and biological systems, seemed like parasitism. The birthing process involves significant physical trauma, Dr. Clark explained matter-of-factly, but human bodies are designed to heal from this damage within weeks. Helen Martinez nodded. "My mom had 4 kids. She always said women are tougher than we look." "Human children are born completely helpless," Dr. Clark continued. "They require constant care for years, but they learn and adapt faster than any other known species." Chris Bailey grinned. "My little cousin learned to walk, talk, and use a tablet all in the same year. Kids are like learning machines." "The human brain continues developing and adapting throughout life," Dr. Clark added. "Elderly humans can learn new skills, languages, and adapt to new technologies." Billy Chen mentioned, "My grandfather is 85 and just learned how to video call on his phone. He says learning new things keeps his brain young." The casual way the humans discussed their incredible adaptability and regenerative abilities was overwhelming to the alien observers. "Humans also demonstrate remarkable psychological resilience," Dr. Clark said. "They can survive traumatic experiences and develop stronger mental defenses." Danny Roberts spoke quietly. "After my dad's accident, our whole family learned to support each other better. We became closer and stronger. Psychological adaptation often involves post-traumatic growth," Dr. Clark explained. "Humans frequently emerge from difficult experiences with improved coping skills and deeper relationships." The bell rang, ending another horrifying lesson. The human students gathered their belongings, discussing their plans for the weekend. Several mentioned challenging physical activities like rock climbing, marathon running, and extreme sports. "For our final class tomorrow," Dr. Clark announced, "we'll explore the human microbiome and symbiotic relationships." As the humans left, chatting about deliberately exposing themselves to physical challenges, the alien students remained paralyzed with fear. "They adapt to anything," Iron Core 17 observed with mechanical precision. "They grow stronger from damage," Whisper Through Storms added, his form barely visible. Crystal's Song of Mourning resonated with the deepest fear frequencies her people had ever recorded. "And tomorrow, we learn about their symbiotic relationships." The thought of what horrors remained to be discovered filled them with dread. The final day of the biology course arrived with an atmosphere of complete terror among the alien students. Crystal's Song of Mourning had spent the night sending emergency communications to her home world, warning them about the horrifying biological capabilities of humans. Whisper Through Storms had compressed himself into the smallest possible form, barely visible as a faint shimmer in the air. Iron Core 17 had transmitted detailed reports to the Ferox Empire, classifying humans as the most dangerous biological entities ever encountered. Dr. Clark entered the classroom carrying a collection of petri dishes, cotton swabs, and various sampling equipment. The human students looked excited for their final project. Jake Morrison was talking about the bacteria he had collected from his gym equipment, while Lisa Parker discussed the microorganisms she had found in her kitchen. "Today we complete our study of human biology with the Microbiome Project," Dr. Clark announced cheerfully. "You've all collected samples from your daily environment. Let's see what lives alongside humans." She gestured to the collection of petri dishes on her desk. Each one was labeled with a student's name and the location where they had collected their sample. "Danny, why don't you start by telling us about your sample?" Dr. Clark suggested. Danny Roberts held up a petri dish covered with small colored dots. "I swabbed my phone screen," he said casually. "There are like 50 different types of bacteria growing in here." He placed the dish under the microscope, and the screen showed a diverse collection of microorganisms, some round, some rod-shaped, some with long tails. "These bacteria live on your phone and transfer to your hands every time you touch it," Dr. Clark explained. "Then they transfer to everything else you touch." Crystal's Song of Mourning's crystalline form began vibrating with pure terror. "Humans, were constantly spreading microscopic life forms to everything around them. Amy Carter showed her sample next. "I collected this from inside my mouth," she said, displaying a petri dish with even more diverse growth. The screen showed an incredible variety of microorganisms, some forming complex communities and structures. The human mouth contains over 700 different species of bacteria, Dr. Clark stated. Most of them are beneficial and help with digestion and immune function. Whisper-through storms pulsed with alarm colors. Humans had hundreds of different species living inside their mouths, and they considered this normal. But here's the really interesting part, Dr. Clark continued. These microorganisms aren't just living with humans, they're essential for human survival. She pulled up a diagram showing the human digestive system filled with different colored areas representing bacterial colonies. Humans have more bacterial cells in their bodies than human cells, she explained. You're essentially walking ecosystems. Tony Adams laughed. So we're like living planets for tiny creatures? Exactly, Dr. Clark confirmed. Your bacteria help digest food, produce vitamins, fight off harmful microorganisms, and even influence your mood and behavior. Iron Core 17's processors were overloading. Humans were not individual organisms at all, but complex symbiotic colonies containing trillions of different life forms. Rachel Green showed her sample from her kitchen sponge. The petri dish was completely covered with bacterial growth in multiple colors. "This is what grows on the sponge I use to clean dishes," she said. "Pretty gross, but I guess it's everywhere anyway." Kitchen sponges are among the most bacteria-rich environments in human homes, Dr. Clark noted. Yet humans handle them daily and suffer no ill effects. Billy Chen presented his sample from his gym bag. "This has been sitting in my locker for a week," he said, showing a dish with fuzzy growths. "I can actually smell it from here." The alien students recoiled as Billy casually discussed living with such high concentrations of microorganisms. "Now let's look at skin bacteria," Dr. Clark said. She had Pete Williams place his hand on a special plate that would show bacterial transfer. After a few seconds, she removed his hand and placed the plate under the microscope. Everywhere his fingers had touched showed dense bacterial populations. Every time humans touch something, they leave behind millions of bacteria, she explained, and they pick up millions more. Gary Foster wiped his nose with his hand. "So I'm constantly exchanging bacteria with everything around me?" "Constantly," Dr. Clark confirmed. "You're in constant communication with the microbial world through touch, breath, and proximity." Maria Santos showed her sample from her car's steering wheel. "This is what grows on something I touch every day," she said. The diversity of bacterial life was staggering. Each sample showed dozens of different species living together in complex communities. "Humans also share bacteria with each other," Dr. Clark continued. "Family members have similar microbiomes. People who live together exchange bacterial communities." Helen Martinez mentioned, "So when I hug my family, we're sharing bacteria?" "Absolutely," Dr. Clark replied. "Physical contact results in microbial exchange. Humans are constantly sharing their internal ecosystems with each other." The concept sent waves of horror through the alien observers. Humans were not only individual colonies of microorganisms, but they were constantly merging and sharing these colonies with other humans. "What about when humans get sick?" Crystal Song of Morning asked, dreading the answer. "Bacterial infections happen when the balance is disrupted," Dr. Clark explained. "But humans have developed chemical weapons to fight harmful bacteria." Chris Bailey mentioned, "I took antibiotics last month for a throat infection. Killed the bad bacteria in a few days." "Antibiotics are chemicals that specifically target and destroy bacterial cells," Dr. Clark said. "Humans have created dozens of different bacterial weapons." The casual way humans discussed waging chemical warfare against microscopic life was terrifying to the alien students. "For our final demonstration," Dr. Clark announced, "let's see bacterial transfer in real time." She had Danny breathe on a fresh petri dish. Within minutes, under the microscope, they could see bacteria beginning to establish colonies from his breath alone. "Every breath releases millions of microorganisms into the environment," she explained. Humans are constantly seeding their surroundings with life. The human students began packing up their materials, discussing their observations, with excitement. They seemed completely unaware that they had just described themselves as walking biological weapons platforms, seeding environments with microscopic life and waging chemical warfare against harmful organisms. "Thank you all for a wonderful semester," Dr. Clark said. "You've learned that human biology is truly remarkable." As the humans left the classroom, several of them shook hands with the alien visitors, not knowing that this simple gesture of friendship was being recorded as the most terrifying moment in galactic history. The three alien students remained frozen as they watched the humans casually exchange bacterial colonies through skin contact, breathing the same air and sharing their microscopic ecosystems without a second thought. "They are not individuals," Iron Core 17 stated with mechanical precision. "They are biological collectives. Walking colonies of trillions of organisms," Whisper Through Storms added, flickering with terror. Crystal Song of Morning resonated, with frequencies of absolute horror. "And they share these colonies with each other through simple touch." As they finally left the classroom, each alien student knew they would spend the rest of their lives trying to forget what they had learned about the terrifying biological reality of human existence. In their reports to their respective governments, they would classify humans not as individuals, but as mobile ecosystem platforms capable of surviving anything the galaxy could throw at them. Meanwhile, Dr. Clark smiled as she cleaned up the classroom, pleased that both her human and alien students had gained such a deep appreciation for the complexity and resilience of life.